And Joe Biden said, under Trump, there have been horrifying scenes of at the border of kids being kept in cages. Now, it's not under Trump, it's under Biden.
This is not kids being kept in cages.
Joining me today is Matt Tragesser. He is the press secretary for the Federation for American Immigration Reform. Matt, thanks so much for joining me today.
Pleasure to be here.
The Biden administration had to reopen a facility in Texas to accommodate more migrant children. Now, this facility itself can hold up to 700 migrant teenagers aging from 13 to 17. Some people then began to question how this was different from what the Trump administration was doing. Now, the White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, said that this facility was opened because of COVID-19 protocols. She's saying that, quote, this is our effort to ensure that kids are not in close proximity. What do you think of this, and how is this different than what the Trump administration was doing?
Well, first, I'd say it's not necessarily entirely related to COVID-19. I think what's happening is the Biden administration's immigration proposals have encouraged large waves of illegal migration at our southern border. For instance, last month's border apprehensions were the largest for that month in January in more than a decade. And why is this happening? Well, President Biden has halted all wall construction. He has suspended the migrant protection protocols. He has decimated all interior enforcement by calling to end private immigration detention centers, by calling to freeze deportations for at least 100 days. So all these actions and moves are encouraging migrants to come to our southern border. And no wonder that they need a overflow facility right now. I mean, it's directly in response to their immigration proposals and their policies that are going into effect right now.
Yeah, I mean, just to go back to what you were saying about how, it's not entirely due to COVID-19 protocols. We had the former acting commissioner of Customs and Border Protection, Mark Morgan, who was recently on talking about the same topic, just on a Fox News hit, talking about, the fact that they are actually just at full operational capacity and not because of COVID-19. Is that message being given to the public enough, given to the American public enough? And if not, why do you think?
No, not at all. I mean, what you're seeing by the Biden administration is a complete denial of what's happening. Again, their immigration policies are encouraging migrants, especially from the Northern Triangle countries of Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, to come here. You can't really blame them. They're being encouraged to come here, and they're sending the wrong message at the wrong time. You would think with COVID restrictions, travel restrictions, border restrictions, that we'd see fewer apprehensions last month or even in the past year, and we're not. So entirely attributed to their proposals and their plans right now. It's really a great mistake.
Something that's also being talked about along the same lines of this migrant facility is, whether or not kids are being kept in cages. Like President Trump was widely criticized, and Jen Psaki said, this is not kids being kept in cages. Some people are disagreeing. So what's really happening?
They're exactly so-called cages. I mean, it's the same type of overflow facilities that we saw under the Trump administration, under the Obama administration. I mean, let's not forget, President Biden was the vice president in 2014 under President Obama when these facilities were created. And to walk away from that and call him some other different name, it's absurd. I mean, I saw this story in the news. I'm thinking it's literally absurd. I just cannot believe that he's trying to distance himself from this. This was exactly what was happening in 2014. And, he was ridiculing the Trump administration for producing or overseeing some of these same types of facilities. And by the way, it's not just in Texas where this extra overflow facility is occurring. It's also brand new ones opening up in Florida, Homestead, Florida. So it goes to show you that there are large waves of migration occurring right now. And there's probably not going to be any end in sight with this.
The stat coming out of Customs and Border Protection, 5,700 unaccompanied minors in January. What happens now? What happens to these kids? And, will they be reunited with family members? What sort of happens next?
Well, that's unclear. A large part of, again, why so many UACs or minor children are coming to the border are to take advantage of the Biden administration's immigration policies. I mean, just last week, President Biden rolled out a mass amnesty immigration plan that said, hey, if you are here illegally, we'll give you a pathway to citizenship. And it's one of the worst amnesties arguably ever in U.S. history. And that alone is encouraging UACs to come at our border at record rates. And a lot of times why these migrants are separated or put in these HHS facilities is because their parent abandon them. The parent has a pending criminal charge in the US or back in their home country. So, there are a lot of other factors as to why they're separated or why they're left alone. But, it is unclear. But I will say, again, they're being incentivized and pulled by the administration's immigration policies.
Let's talk a little bit more broadly about the Biden immigration policy. And part of that is a commitment to tackling the root causes driving migration with an integrated 4-year, $4 billion regional strategy. What is this? And, will this have a positive or negative impact, do you think?
Right. So this is a multi-billion-dollar plan to address the root causes in Central America, particularly in the Northern Triangle countries. And I have to say, it's really an ineffective strategy. We've seen this time after time after time in the past few decades that these large foreign aid packages that go to the Northern Triangle countries don't work. They don't help control illegal migration. For instance, in 2014, which was seen as one of the worst years for border apprehensions in our immigration history, we had 237,000 migrants apprehended that year. In response to that, the Obama administration dedicated $750 million to the Northern Triangle countries to address these so-called root causes. 5 years later, apprehensions soared by 160% to more than 600,000. 600,000. And so, again, clearly, if this aid was working and if it were addressing the root causes, it would be reducing apprehensions. And we're seeing the exact opposite. It's really ineffective. And let's not forget either, some of these leaders of the Northern Triangle countries are corrupt. They're charged with many crimes. The State Department just released a report where more than 50 senior officials in the Northern Triangle governments were found facilitating corruption in the Northern Triangle countries. I mean, I just can't see how giving them $4 billion in US taxpayer aid is going to be spent wisely. It's a mistake. And if anything, President Biden should be looking at his own policies that are incentivizing migration to our country, not the policies of other countries.
Do you think there will be any sort of significant change with President Biden's immigration policies? Do you think he'll maybe, reverse some of his executive orders, or do you think he'll, eventually take a different approach, or do you think what we're seeing now will be the next 4 years?
Well, I certainly think he's going to have to take some drastic action. I mean, what he's doing right now, just in the first 2 months of office, is insane. I mean, so many executive orders involving immigration, more so than COVID orders, more so than orders addressing our economy that's been damaged by COVID-19. I mean, his sole focus has been immigration. And so, we're seeing the early effects of these large migration waves will probably, again, I mean, we're already in essentially a border crisis, and it's only going to get worse. So he's going to have to think fast. Am I going to have to change these to better our country, or am I going to have to just keep the status quo? I don't know. Remains to be seen.